Good morning. Archbishop Richard Gagnon here, and this is our Friday morning report. I'm speaking to you from the Catholic Center in Winnipeg. So welcome. Thank you for tuning in to this Friday morning report. The purpose of this report is simply to say a few words about what is happening in the Archdiocese during these days of the coronavirus crises. I think the most important thing that's come our way in the past week has been our protocols, our revised protocols for the parishes in the Archdiocese. And these protocols are available online on our website, so I invite you to have a look at those. They cover quite a wide area of interest in the practice of our faith. And so our parishes will be slowly opening up. Some have already. Everything is based on the current provincial guidelines of 25 people, including the presider. We strongly suspect that will be changing in the near future, and when it does, parishes will act accordingly. But currently it's 25 people for each gathering. If there's more than one gathering on a Sunday, for example, that's how it is, 25 for each gathering. But we need to follow the provincial guidelines with regards to that. And I think the point here is that because there's an awful lot that goes into preparing the opening up of our parishes, that each parish will open when it is ready. The protocols are effective immediately, but I noticed last weekend some parishes were opened up. This weekend there are further ones, and also into June. There's preparation to be done and consultation with parish councils and so on and so forth. As I've said before, it's one thing to close things down, to cancel masses and public celebrations. That in a certain sense is easy to do. It's hard on all of us, but the action is easy to do. But opening up is much more complicated. Right after this Friday morning report, I have an interview with Father Geoffrey Angeles, who is the Rector for St. Mary Cathedral in Winnipeg, and he explains to us a little bit about the complications involved with reopening up. Another point in the protocols, besides the details that are involved in opening up our parishes and keeping to the provincial guidelines, are our parish offices. The Catholic Center will be open as of June the 1st, reduced hours, but still open for business, if you will. To respond to the needs of people on different levels. And I'm asking that our parish offices also throughout the Archdiocese of Winnipeg be open on June the 1st, reduced hours, but with the ability to respond to the people of God on various different levels and for various different needs. I encourage all our churches to be open as much as possible. This is very important. During times of crises and difficulty, our faith is a light, and the Holy Eucharist being present in our churches, a place of prayer, a place where the community gathers, it's important that our people have access to our churches. I realize, of course, it's not possible to open our churches, all day long in some cases, but our pastors will let our people know when the churches will be open for private prayer, for visits, and simply to be there if there's exposition of the Blessed Sacrament available. That's also a very good thing. It's an opportunity for healing as well. The sacrament of reconciliation hopefully will be available, and perhaps just the need to talk. I've become very aware in these last days of the need of people to simply to talk, to express their faith, their concerns. These are times of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear among people, there's uncertainty, and our faith is a rock. Our faith is a light for us. It lights our way. And so what we can do to be a place of healing, as Pope Francis would say, a field hospital, I think this is a time where the faith really shows its light in being an essential, if you will, service for the people of God and for society in general. It's also an opportunity to draw close to the Blessed Sacrament. The power of the Lord's presence in the Blessed Sacrament is very important in our lives. The live streaming program throughout the Archdiocese of Winnipeg has been very successful, and it will continue according to the needs of each parish. As far as the Cathedral is concerned, we will continue on Sundays to live stream the Masses. The time will change, however. The first Sunday of June, the Sunday morning Mass will be 11:30 rather than 11 o'clock. 11:30 on Sundays. We will continue to pray the Rosary at 5 after 11 prior to the Mass. I've also noted the importance of our homes, our family life as a domestic church. I encourage you to continue what you have started: spiritual communion, praying at home, reading the Scriptures, reflecting on the Scriptures. On our website, we have a simple publication that comes from the Congregation for Communications in Rome. It's called Strong in the Face of Tribulation, Strong in the Face of Tribulation. These are a series of reflections and short homilies by the Holy Father, and also simple prayer services we can do individually or at home, and it is updated continually on the website. So I just want to refer that to you as a possible resource. In within 2 weeks, I will be speaking to all of the clergy, many of our deacons, and some of our lay leaders once again, as I have meetings with our 6 deaneries throughout the Archdiocese to discuss how things are going with regards to the opening up of our churches. It's an opportunity to respond to questions, to hear what concerns are, and simply to find out what is going on within the whole Archdiocese in terms of this experience. Actually, I've noticed that people are very excited that our churches are beginning to open. We want this to happen faster, but we have to go one step at a time. And so I'm very pleased with the efforts that our parishes are making to, if you will, come from the catacombs into daylight and to celebrate once again our faith publicly. And please God, in a short period of time, we'll be able to expand the number of people who will be able to attend Masses throughout the Archdiocese. As of every Friday report, we have a series of questions, and I received more questions this week. I'll try to answer them the best I can. The first question has to do with catechism. Can our young catechism students return to their classes? Well, at the present time, I've been told by our catechism coordinator in the Office of Catechetics in the Archdiocese that home learning, homeschooling, and catechism will continue. There are resources on the website. Some of the coordinators in some of the parishes are making a lot of contact with the students, particularly the sacramental preparation. And I would encourage you to contact your coordinators if you have questions about this, or indeed the Office of Catechetics in the Archdiocese of Winnipeg. The online learning in some parishes, as I've said, continues, and some parishes are able to do this more effectively than others. But I would simply ask you to contact your parish coordinators or the Office of Catechetics. There will be further instructions regarding this matter as we move forward, particularly with regards to confirmation, which now is up to the parishes to consider when this might be possible relative to the number of peoples allowed to gather in our churches. The same with First Communions. So I simply would give you that advice at the present time, and I will be speaking with the Office of Catechetics about what further instruction can go out to our parishes regarding this very important matter of forming our young people in the faith, which was one of the goals of our synod, by the way. Another question, could you give an update about our elect longing to be received into the church? Normally at Easter this occurs, and receive the Lord in the Eucharist. Well, once again, this is a matter for the individual parishes. Now that the Masses are being celebrated publicly, 25 people are allowed. Well, as we move forward with this, if there are individuals who have been part of the RCIA program, then certainly plans can begin to be put in motion with regards to when the sacraments of initiation can be administered. I'm allowing each parish the flexibility to determine which time would be best for that. This year and next year, our pastors will be administering the sacrament of confirmation themselves, and I will give permission for the parishes to do this. So now is the time to begin to speak and to plan in this area. Finally, the last question, could you share a story of faith that you've heard during this time of pandemic? Well, first of all, we are inviting all of you to share your stories with the Office of Communications so that we can put together a resource in the On the Way magazine for the Archdiocese. So keep that in mind. And regardless of how seemingly simple the stories might be, I think we can find inspiration in these stories of faith, all of us. In my particular case, a recent event, I've been in communication with an inmate at Stony Mountain Prison who is serving a long time in prison. And I had the great privilege and joy of confirming him last year. And he wrote me a beautiful letter explaining to me, his life since confirmation. At the present time in the prisons, the chaplains are not present to the inmates. And so very much they're on their own. And I know that when I visit the prisons, there's always gatherings of inmates there for Mass or for other kinds of spiritual services, and it's very inspirational when I participate in those. In this particular case, this man, he volunteers to be in the chapel in the prison to conduct and participate in Bible studies. And he volunteers his time just to be around the chapel, to look after the chapel, to be present, and indeed to be a witness to the Catholic faith that he entered about a year and a half ago. Beautiful story of faith, beautiful story of his learning the faith, his reading of the catechism and other kinds of reading that he's doing, and his personal prayer. Very much he misses the Eucharist already. He misses a time of gathering with his fellow Catholics in prison. And so even though we have been isolated and under lockdown in many different ways, it's particularly severe within the prison community. So I gained great inspiration hearing about these stories from individual Catholics, such as this inmate at Stony Mountain Prison. I thank him very much for communicating with me and sharing a little bit of his faith life. There will be a meeting also in a very short while with Pastoral Services of the Archdiocese and the Synod Coordinator to consider our Synod implementation and how we're going to approach that in the days ahead. So finally, I just want to offer you the opportunity of listening in briefly to a conversation I had with Father Geoffrey Angeles, who is the Rector of St. Mary's Cathedral, and he explains to us in a rather interesting way some of the challenges that are involved in opening up the cathedral to public worship. Hello, Archbishop Richard Gagnon here. We just finished celebrating the Feast of the Ascension at the Cathedral, live streaming, and I'm with the Rector of the Cathedral Parish, Father Geoffrey Angeles. Thanks, Father Geoffrey, for stopping by for this. And we're going to talk a little bit about the protocols because they just came out a few days ago, and it's much easier to cancel masses than to reopen everything up again. It's complicated. And each parish has their own particular challenges, and there's need for consultation with people, there's need for careful thought as to how the protocols will align together throughout the Archdiocese. And so Father Geoffrey's role, the bishop is the actual pastor of the cathedral, but the rector, he administers and he pastors the cathedral parish for the bishop. And of course, cathedrals are downtown parishes. There's all kinds of issues regarding security and so on that come into this. And so I thought it might be helpful today to have a little chat with Father Geoffrey to see how he's approaching the application of our protocols to help our local church move forward and to open up to public worship again. So thanks, Father Geoffrey. So I guess the first question I have that might be interesting for people would be, what is the process you used in order to start working on these protocols for the parish community?
Well, for a good while now, we've all been keeping our ear to the ground as to what various places are doing in various parts of the country and even internationally. And so in anticipation of the protocols that would be coming to us through the Archdiocese, which are based on what the government has also administered, I put together an ad hoc committee of 8 parish members, individuals with various skill sets and experience that would help me to kind of look at how some of the protocols that are already being disseminated in different parts would be appropriated for our particular situation here at St. Mary's.
Right.
Given the fact that even when the protocols are given, we know that every parish community has its own character. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. And one of the greater concerns among the members of this protocols committee is not so much the safety within the parish walls, because we know that there is a certain level of control that we have, given that the numbers are gradually increasing. So at 25, it's not so difficult to monitor that.
Right.
It's given the fact that we have over 900 registered households.
Yes.
And how to organize what happens outside the walls of the cathedral, also being within the context of this downtown area with their own safety, and so that we also don't draw attention and by gathering more than the number for public gatherings outside. We've decided that the best way to execute an organized fashion for returning to church is to contact every single registered parish members. Now that's tough because again, not everybody has given us their email addresses. And so in light of that, beginning tomorrow, we have some training sessions for those who are going to be calling our parishioners, basically a phoning tree or a phoning bee. I'm not sure what the proper term is, but and what we would be doing is we would be doing a survey asking people which Mass they would prefer to come if they, first of all, intend on coming right away, and we would then schedule them a slot that would be appropriate for them to come. Because again, 25 people at a time, and if you extract, those, if you don't count the ones who are presiding and the other ministers, it decreases even more. So we really ask for everyone's patience at this time, but when we all realize that at the very heart of all this is our responsibility to be our brother and sister's keeper, as Christians, as you mentioned in your homily today, we are Christ. How do we protect the most vulnerable among us? That is key, and that is so important. So it may take a little while. We're hoping that at the beginning of June, but we don't know when exactly, because again, it all depends once we start communicating with our parishioners. Now, social media has been very helpful. We gave everybody a heads up last week as to some of the measures that we're taking, and we already received quite a few responses, knowing that in light of the safety precautions that we are taking, they are waiting patiently for their call, and I think that's a wonderful response so far.
And when you mention over 900 households for the Cathedral Parish, you're talking about thousands of people.
Exactly.
And so even when the number goes to 50 from 25, you're still going to be faced with the same problem. Many people look upon this rather simplistically. They think, well, let's open it up again and people will come. Oh, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because you have that whole world outside the possibility of the 25 you're dealing with. But as you were talking, Father Geoffrey, I thought it was very positive, this whole notion of contact with parishioners by telephone tree. That in itself is a kind of a ministry. That is a positive thing in itself. And so it's good to have an appreciation for the complexity of opening things up again to parishioners. That's really helpful. And when they come into the church, when you've established a procedure for that, what will the Cathedral Parish be doing to ensure their health safety. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
What do you have in mind in your discussions so far about that?
Well, first of all, accessibility is key. As for those who are, as you're familiar with the front doors or the front entrance, there are stairs, and not everyone can access the stairs, right? Given their limitations, perhaps. But so we will be limiting the entrance to one door on the Hargrave side, which also allows for loading and such. After which they will be met by somebody with all of the proper PPEs, all the equipment where they will be screened yet again. However, bear in mind that all of the screening will have taken place by having been contacted when the particular Mass time has been confirmed by the Cathedral and together with the parishioner. So they will enter, they will meet 2 volunteers or 2 staff members who will be wearing all the protective gear, and then they will come into the Cathedral in a particular way. We have kind of decided that because we do have to sanitize all of the contact surfaces between Masses, on Sundays what we're doing is for one Mass, there will be designated areas where people will be seated, and for the second Mass, there will be completely different designated areas.
That makes it a little easier for sanitization.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when it comes to exiting, the other 2 doors will be available for exiting based on the arrows that will be on the floor, which people can follow.
And as difficult as this is, when you mention screening at the doors, what you're referring to, I think, is you are ensuring that those who said they're coming to Mass will be there, as opposed to just anybody walking off the street, which normally would be our practice.
Exactly.
But right now, we really can't do that. And so an interesting question that came my way too, Father Geoffrey, is that how are parishioners prepared to come? Like, what is said to them prior to coming when you have your contact with them? Is there any kind of instructions or directions given to them in preparing to come to Mass under these circumstances?
Yes, so there will be questions that will be posed to every parishioner that is contacted, and all the details will be given at that point, as well as their confirmation. I think one of the things that we have to prepare for also for those who are not contacted, given that we are the Cathedral and that there are a number of walk-ins, is unfortunately the reality that maybe some people will have to be turned away. And that's where we truly ask for people's patience and understanding. It's not that we wish to turn people away, it's just that there needs to be an organized fashion in order to secure people's safety at this time. Now, people are probably going to wonder, well, what if I'm not registered at the parish? But I've been going to the Cathedral for a number of years. I didn't realize I had to.
Right.
Well, our Protocols Committee is in the middle of just vetting a page, a COVID-19 page on our website, and all of the details of what to expect and how to prepare for returning to Mass will be outlined there. One of the things is, we know that the protocols that were given by the Archdiocese, they will be for public viewing. Obviously, they're already out there. What we have done to kind of enable people's, well, it's kind of daunting to read a bunch of protocols. So we have kind of also given another option where we reverse it, where we have FAQs, like frequently asked questions, so that people could just look at the various questions that they may have and align them with the questions that we have online, to which would then correspond to the various protocols that have already been given to us. So sometimes our questions need to be answered, and to look at a document that is a bunch of words can be a bit daunting.
Very good point. Yeah.
So in terms of preparation, there's a lot more that goes into all of this, but I hope that gives a little bit of a taste of what this very diligent committee has been working on together. It's been really neat too, because we've only been meeting online for the past 3 weeks, and we do know how much work there is, and we have about 25 parishioners who are going to be doing the phone calling, and because again, given the sensitive information, it's all personal information, we want to ensure that there's a confidentiality waiver that they do sign, as well as record checks and such, so that our people feel safe when they do get a call. With all the scams that we hear today with a CRA or whomever posing as another kind of authority, we want to just ensure that we've covered all of our bases. Some may think that this is a bit overly cautious, but one can never be too careful with these things. So tomorrow we will begin with a script and with the training of some of our parishioners who will be calling, and I'm looking forward to that because I haven't spoken to some of these people in a while. And even though we'll be speaking online, it's still a wonderful option that we have.
And I've been talking a little bit in various ways about volunteerism, that we need the people of God to pull together in a synodal way in order to make a good transition. It's a challenge for sure.
I have to, sorry.
Go ahead.
I have to add something. You mentioned
Sure.
synodal.
Yeah.
One of the committee members has cleverly resurrected, I would suppose, our synod prayer. In light of the COVID-19, we have to have at our very, very core a realization of our identity in everything that we're doing, because so often we can get caught up in all of the rules and the regulations and the protocols. You know how much tension there is when you go to the grocery store, for example. How do we alleviate some of that tension? And some of the words in that synod prayer was deemed as very appropriate at this time. So I thank that person on our committee who kind of raised that forward and resurrected a prayer that we thought was done with.
Very interesting. You're putting ideas in my head, Father Geoffrey.
There you go.
Maybe the last question I'll ask today is simply this. What is your hope during this time of transition? What hope do you have?
My hope during this transition is that as we gradually phase into a new norm, that first of all, we recognize the treasure of who we are as church. And not to see it as something that once used to be, but maybe an exciting time where our identity in Jesus Christ as the church, as you mentioned in your homily today, can be looked in a new way. And as we approach Pentecost, with the gifts of the Holy Spirit, how does the gift of wisdom inspire us in new ways so that the church continues its mandate, as we hear today, to baptize all nations in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit? Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and so there's hope. There's hope. And I think as a final note, the church throughout the ages, under many different kinds of circumstances, always proved to be very flexible in terms of the evangelization method. And that's what we're up against now in terms of a new landscape for evangelization. So I've got to tell you, I'm very pleased with the efforts you've made. I like the idea of a protocol committee and the work you've done here. The Cathedral Parish has a particular challenge being downtown the way you are, and on a number of different levels. So thank you, Father Geoffrey, for sharing with all of us a little bit of how you're approaching this. And as you say, individual parishes have their own story, but I think this will be helpful to many people. So
I hope so. And what we've compiled is a procedures book so that we don't only have something for reference in future in case we may need it, but something to maybe help other parishes appropriate some of these things that we've already put together for their own circumstances.
Excellent. So thank you very much. Wow, there you go. Thank you very much, Father Geoffrey, for that. And I think that some of the things that Father Geoffrey shared with us will be helpful to us, in fact, to all the parishes with regards to the way that they go about the reopening process throughout the Archdiocese. So thank you once again for listening in this morning on this Friday report. The Lord be with you, and may God be with you, protect you, and keep you safe. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.